Welcome back to the Chasing Common Ground podcast. It's funny because I also help with the PT Profit podcast. And so as I'm recording this, I almost start saying the intro for another show. But to kind of get us on track with what we're talking about in this episode, today is going to be more of an educational episode talking about the need to place some urgency in physical activity. To give us some backstory here, since the mid 2000s, there has been a noticeable decline in physical activity levels across North America. Sedentary lifestyles driven by increased screen time, remote work, and urbanization have contributed to this decline. And frankly, the rise in smartphones and streaming services and all the different things that draw us to our phone has led to more sedentary behavior, with people spending less time engaging in physical activities like walking, sports, and outdoor activities, and simply just holding their phone and staring at it. So, despite this overall decline, there's a lot of people that are aware of what fitness is, the ways that they can practice it, and the businesses that evolve around fitness, things like Orange Theory or the corporate Globo gyms, as they call them, and just the simple idea of a personal trainer. We have to remember that, like 40 years ago, personal trainers really were not commonplace. And now, probably one in five people that you talk to, in at least in an urban center, have probably worked with, know, or have thought about working with a personal trainer. That in mind, I do have to admit there is some inequality in activity levels, and just simply because of like environmental circumstances, socioeconomic status, lower income communities aren't always that safe for exercise. And if they are of a lower income level, it's not as easy for them to drop into different classes and stuff. And that is honestly why I advocate for walking first and foremost. A, because it's like requires the least amount of thinking to do. And then B, because it requires the least amount of investment to make it happen. Now, when it comes to solving the problem of, let's say, just a shady neighborhood for walking, some of the things that we could look at are starting to build community around your activity. So it's one thing to walk by yourself. That can be very scary and dangerous. But if you're walking in a group of 20 people, it's going to look a lot differently. And so whether it be like for some people, they might be part of a group based on like church or school. So whatever kind of community group that you have, if you can start to integrate physical activity into that, then it starts to remove the barrier of having to afford classes or having to be indoors to do that physical activity. If it is a geographical limitation where you live on the edge of a mountain and there's just simply no safe spaces to walk where it is not a fall risk, then I would consider just different modalities of being active. In some instances, lack of ability to walk could mean that there's an opportunity to do some swimming. In other instances, let's say you're in a very busy urban center and you're just in a rough neighborhood that's always under construction, there's nowhere to walk. That's where you can start to get creative. Some people, as they're just starting to get into fitness, an activity that they really like is Zumba. And the thing that I like about Zumba is, as far as I know with it, there really are no like rules. It's all kind of made up. You're gonna probably find some people with their Zumba method and the special moves that you do, but from a general standpoint, you just have to move to the music. Whether you have rhythm, whether you have beat, doesn't matter. Just dance, dance to the music. So if you can't walk, but you can play some music or you can find a beat that's catchy, just dance. Now, that might not seem like the most helpful solution for everybody that's tuning in, But the thing is that ever since 2020 and everything that's associated with that, a lot of people's social circles have changed. A lot of people's work has changed, the structure of the work, the volume of work. Some people are working more. Some people got laid off and they can't find work again. Some people's work has changed to be all from home, which is in most cases incredible, except for the fact that we have to take into account the amount of steps that we take as we're going out to the vehicle or we're headed to the bus or we're walking across the property of the building where we work, whether it's walking across a field to get to the front door, walking through the hallways to get to your office, walking to grab your coffee, etc. So then, if your work has changed, where you simply, there is no like essential reason for you to leave the house, you honestly, you have to start making up reasons. Even if it feels impractical, even if it feels like other things should take priority, even if it feels like it's not really necessary because there's nothing like really alarmingly wrong now, the evidence is overwhelmingly in favor of you walking every single day. And the downside is if you just simply choose not to, the things that tend to creep up are things like Alzheimer's, dementia, heart disease. All these things are very hard to detect and see coming. And so it's for that reason, and because I care about the people that I know, it's become that much more important to quite bluntly promote physical activity. And it 100% can start with just simply increasing your walking to a level in which you are walking a bare minimum of 7,000 steps every day. And if you are walking 1,000 steps, you would just simply meter that up week by week, day by day. Um, you don't have to do 7,000 overnight if you are getting 150 steps a day, but look at a 10% increase week by week. Look at something that is stepped up so that your body isn't completely overwhelmed by such a sudden shock, but so that you have a plan to progress over time. Maybe like a deadline to which by that day you will be averaging 7,000 steps per day. They're essentially what it comes down to with steps is most of the studies show that about 7,000 is the amount of steps to reach where you would basically achieve majority of the benefits that you would get from walking. But we also have to factor in the deliciousness of the food that is at the different businesses, at like how things are produced. Like if you compare a meal that is made with whole foods to a meal that is processed and you just have to heat it up in the oven in the microwave, the calorie footprint is much different because A, the food that is processed is going to include a lot of different flavors, a lot of different additives that make it delicious, but also cause us to probably inflate our portion sizes a bit. Maybe not in where we're tracking, but in the realities of how much we truly had to eat. Similar to how people like to show you what a tablespoon of peanut butter is. And in more cases than not, everybody's idea of a tablespoon of peanut butter is probably 2.5 tablespoons of peanut butter in reality because it's like a heaping spoon or it's a spoon, then you lick the spoon because there's extra on it. Like just there's some kind of a discrepancy where we are overshooting things. And so if it's something like a delicious coffee from Starbucks, that's 500 calories, but we're like, it's just a coffee. Because we're thinking about when somebody who drinks a black coffee just has a coffee. It's two different things, very different outcomes. Or we can think about when you're like, it's just a piece of pizza. But like a piece of pizza that's delivered to your house from like a chain pizza place could very easily be like 200 to 300 calories per piece, kind of depending on the size of the pizza and the ingredients on it. Whereas if you made the pizza yourself, chances are that pizza you made yourself is going to be a little bit more dense, a little bit more filling, depending on the style of dough that you make, depending on the toppings that you add on. But when you're making a pizza for yourself, and I've talked about this with a lot of my online clients, you have the opportunity to make a high protein dough. You can make it taste like regular dough. You can also add leaner cuts of meat instead of relying on things like bacon and pepperoni. You could just use some cut up chicken. You could take some beef and put that on there. And it can still taste delicious. You can load it up with vegetables. You can add your cheese, but you just have a little bit more control over your energy balance in that you can achieve a lean and healthy body composition while still enjoying pizza. So, bringing us back to the health concerns that lead me to record this episode is that heart disease is still one of the leading causes of death in North America. Despite the fact that everybody's probably heard of the brand Peloton, despite the fact that everybody probably knows where there is a gym near their home, whether they've been in there or not, they probably can locate a gym without having to Google it. They've probably driven past one with neon lights, or they know someone in their network who goes to a gym, who works at a gym. So people are aware of fitness and people are aware of health and people have access to education. You can create your workout program through ChatGPT. There's all kinds of things that you can do, and yet still heart disease remains the leading cause of death. And these are statistics according to the CDC that about 697,000 people died from heart disease in the US in 2020, accounting for one in every five deaths. And so physical inactivity increases the risk of heart disease by 20 to 30%. And so if you were so much as active, you could reduce the amount of risk for heart disease and potentially, as part of a greater collective, reduce the amount of people dying from heart disease. And when we are comparing US statistics to Canadian statistics, most Canadian statistics are limited simply because our population is the size of like one US state. Our population is very comparable to California or Texas population. And I would have to say that overall, we have very similar statistics to the US. So if you're a Canadian listening, essentially take the US statistic and adopt it as ours too, because we are not that much further ahead and we have the cold climates, which make it very difficult for people who aren't set up to be active to stay active. One of the other things that's a concern is the topics of depression and mental health. So, as many people have learned over the years, the more that you are on your phone looking at sadness and doom and gloom, being drawn into the controversy, the turmoil, the addictive TV shows where they leave you on a cliffhanger. Like, how many people have binge watched a Netflix series? I know I have. So factoring all of that stuff in causes us to be less active, more sedentary, more in our head, less social connection, and it poses a problem. It causes people to stop taking care of themselves. It causes people to avoid social interaction, to make excuses, to press forth with something that they don't enjoy simply because they feel like it's something that they are destined to have to do out of some weird responsibility to have to suffer for the rest of their life. An example being like if you're signed up for something that you didn't want to be signed up for, but you're just going through with it because you're like, well, I deserve this. I should have to do this. Like that could be stemming from a lot of sedentary behavior where you just start to lose your motivation, you start to lose that spark for life and that optimism of what's possible with the next few decades. Where I go to for inspiration oftentimes is by seeing older adults in the gym, people in their 70s, 80s, 90s, doing what they can do because anybody can fall prey to the darkness of mental health. Anybody can fall prey to the drawbacks of living a sedentary lifestyle, like not having as many abilities to do things, not being able to go up and down a ladder, struggling to go upstairs, being winded as you're carrying a couch. Nobody is immune to this stuff. And especially as you essentially pass the age of 30, it starts creeping on you faster and faster because there are less things in our life that naturally keep us active. When you were a kid, you got other kids that want to play. You've got school where they have recess, hopefully. You have sports that you play. You have more friendships as a child than you will ever have as an adult, with the odd exception. It's just when you look at friendship studies, friendships drop after the age of 30, and it's a combination of added responsibility to changing careers, to changing geographies, and just simply no longer having like an incubator to create and foster those friendships. We also have to look at diabetes because, I mean, diabetes, colon cancer, there's all kinds of stuff that can relate to a lack of balanced nutrition. If somebody is lacking in getting proper protein, which has resulted in them getting maybe too much processed foods, having too much sugar in their diet. I'm not anti-sugar by any means, by the way. It is just simply that everything needs to be in moderation, and the most nutrient dense foods we need to have at least the minimum standard of them. And so, if let's say you're listening to this or watching this and you are a 150-pound individual, if you were trying to figure out how much protein you should have, the guideline generally is about 80 to 100% of body weight, and it'll vary depending on person you're talking to in the context. But if you're looking to get stronger and change your body composition in favor of having a more lean, more defined appearance, more fit, more active looking, then you would be more better off to get 100% of that recommendation, meaning that if you're 150 pounds, you'd aim to get 150 grams of protein per day. What that could look like is you'd have maybe 3 meals a day that are composed of like 30 to 40 grams of protein at each meal. And then the remainder amount of protein you would consume in maybe a snack, whether that be between meals or at the end of the day as you wind down. Maybe you're having some Greek yogurt and some almonds and some fruit with some honey drizzled on top. Something pleasant, something that's enjoyable. You don't have to hate your life while being on track. A situation where you might not want or need as much protein is if you reach a point where you are satiated, you don't want any more food, and you've gotten at least like 70% of your protein target. Let's say in this scenario, you're 150 pounds and you got 100 grams of protein in the day. You're probably still going to experience all the benefits that protein can give you, especially that feeling of fullness, the increase of energy level, the better recovery and muscle building aspects of having more protein. Protein also helps with your immune system and whether indirectly or directly contributes to a better mental health. Because if not because it keeps you more active, it could simply be because your body is functioning better. You're better absorbing nutrients. You're probably sleeping better. You're probably going to end up one way or another being better hydrated because some instances will have food that leads to us really not moving much, and we also don't drink much fluids. Whereas other food could lead to us feeling a bit more thirsty and getting the adequate amount of water that's needed. Because if you track the amount of water that you're drinking per day, you might be falling short. Some people they'll have coffee in the morning and then they'll have alcohol in the evening, and that's their liquids for the day, and they hadn't had a full bottle of water at any point in the entire day. And that's where you want to be mindful of the risk of things like, well, all kinds of stuff, but kidney stones for one. Being hydrated helps you in many, many, many ways. And so, with that said, the easiest time to intervene with these things is now. So, there's no sense to wait until like you have more time, because time is kind of one of those fluid things where the goalposts always move. I could say I'm going to wait to change careers. Like I could have said I was going to wait to change careers until life settled down, but I don't think life ever settles down. We adapt to things, we adjust to things. I could say I'm going to do something when I'm totally ready, but what is ready? And so it's it's unequivocally tougher to make a change in your lifestyle at a later age than it is at the present age. And so even if it was just a matter of locking in those 7,000 steps per day, that'd be a great start. From there, you could layer in some strength training. Strength training can quite easily start with bodyweight movements, and then you can start to look for resistance in any form or fashion. Like I have had people just using their reusable water jug that you get for bottled water for a water cooler, because I think those are 30 to 40 pounds, and you just use that. Use that for a goblet squat. Just hug the water bottle and squat with that. Even just regular size water bottles, like 750 milliliter, 1 liter water bottles, you could use those as dumbbells. So cost doesn't have to be a barrier. You can get creative and start being active. And if you have the means, then you can start looking at, okay, let's find an environment to train. Let's look at the gyms in the area. Let's go somewhere that's fun to go to with familiar faces, with equipment that's fun to use, or let's find a facility where a trainer that is engaging, that can give you that sense of connection, community, and education all in one. Find something like that. Um, so there's definitely lots of options. But with that said, it looks like my camera battery is going to die. So I'm going to leave you on a cliffhanger. Essentially, you are going to find ways to be more active, and then you're going to tell me about it. So whether you follow me on social media at Christian Little, or you can email me, chris@invigoratetraining.com. Report to me if you are someone who was less active and how you became more active, or tell me what you're up to. But thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.